There is a woman who walks quietly through the world. She does not announce her presence. She does not ask for applause or for the nod of recognition from anyone who passes by. She is, in her essence, alone. And yet she is not lonely. She has learned that the space around her, when empty of others, is not a void but a canvas, a place upon which she can draw the colors of her own spirit, the bold strokes of her own dreams, the gentle curves of her own thoughts. There is power in walking alone. Though few understand it at first glance, it is the power of becoming your own companion, your own witness, your own solace. A woman with no friends is not a woman who is broken. She is not a woman who has failed. She is a woman who has discovered that she can breathe without relying on the air of others. She has learned that laughter does not need to echo from another mouth, that tears do not require a shoulder to fall upon. She has learned that the beat of her own heart is enough to carry her through the night, through the long, aching stretches of silence that others fear. And in that silence, she hears herself, truly hears herself. And what she hears is a strength so profound, it cannot be measured by the number of companions she has or the laughter she shares with those who walk beside her. When a woman walks alone, she learns patience. She learns that there is no rush to fit into the mold that society sets before her, no need to force her steps to match the hurried pace of others. She walks at her own rhythm, sometimes slow, sometimes swift, but always true. She learns to take each step with intention, to place her foot firmly upon the ground, to feel the solid earth beneath her, and to know that she stands on her own strength. The world may try to tell her that she is incomplete, that she is lacking because she has no circle to hold her, no tribe to celebrate her, no chorus to echo her voice. But she knows differently. She knows that completion is not found in others, but in oneself. She learns discernment, the kind that only comes when one has spent nights in the quiet and has had time to study the faces of the world from a distance. She learns to recognize who will lift her up and who will drain her spirit. She learns that some will come with words that glitter like gold, but with hands that wound like knives. And in her solitude, she finds the wisdom to protect her heart, to honor her own worth, to reserve her energy for those who deserve it. A woman with no friends learns to say no, not with bitterness, not with anger, but with the calm certainty of one who has faced herself in the mirror and found a soul worth guarding. In walking alone, she discovers creativity, for creativity flourishes in spaces where there is room to think, to dream, to fail, to rise again. In the absence of constant companionship, she invents worlds within her mind. She writes stories in the air. She paints visions across the walls of her heart. She sings songs that have no audience but her own soul, and in those songs, she finds joy. She learns that she does not need the applause of others to validate her talent, for the creation itself is reward enough. And this, my friends, is a kind of magic, to create for oneself, to find satisfaction in one's own hands, to nourish the spirit from within. This is power. There is resilience in walking alone. She has known moments when the night seemed too long, when the silence seemed too deep, when the weight of the world pressed upon her chest. And yet she continued. She continued not because she had to, but because she knew the strength within her was real. She discovered that survival does not depend on the approval of others, but on the steadfast refusal to give up on oneself. And each step she takes, though solitary, carries the echo of her triumphs. Each moment she endures adds a layer to her strength, a depth to her character, a light to her soul. She learns self-love, the kind that does not bend or bow to the expectations of the world. She learns to speak kindly to herself in the mirror, to cradle her own heart, to honor the whispers of her own spirit. She learns to celebrate her victories, even when there is no one to cheer. She learns to hold her own hand when the path grows dark, and in this act of turning inward, of finding love within, she becomes unshakable. For when a woman loves herself without reservation, the storms of the world cannot uproot her. When she embraces her worth, no criticism can diminish her. When she treasures her soul, no betrayal can wound her beyond repair. And yet, she does not reject the world. She does not close her heart to those who may come into her life with genuine love and respect. But she has learned discernment, the kind that does not settle for companionship at any cost. She waits for connections that elevate her, for friendships that are reciprocal, for hearts that honor her as she is. She understands that to walk alone is not to walk forever without others, but to walk with the confidence that she does not need anyone else to define her. And when she chooses to walk with others, it is a conscious choice, not a desperate plea. She learns humility, for in the quiet she sees the beauty of the world that often goes unnoticed. She watches the sun rise over rooftops and feels the wind on her skin and recognizes the small miracles that surround her each day. She learns that she is part of a larger tapestry, that even as she walks alone, she is connected to the lives around her in ways she cannot always see. And in this humility she finds peace. She does not need to boast of her achievements. She does not need to announce her victories. She knows that the quiet strength within her is sufficient, that her journey is sacred, that her steps matter, even if no one is watching. And there is courage in walking alone. For it takes courage to stand apart from the crowd, to resist the pull of conformity, to trust in oneself when the world whispers doubt. She has known moments when fear beckoned her to seek comfort in numbers, to cling to companionship even when it was hollow. But she resisted. She chose the path of truth, the path of integrity, the path of her own soul. And in that courage she discovers freedom, the freedom to be wholly unapologetically herself. A woman with no friends learns the value of her own time. She learns that her hours are precious and that she must spend them with intention. She learns to read, to write, to walk, to reflect, to rest. She learns that productivity is not only measured in work, but in the care she gives herself, in the attention she pays to her spirit, in the way she nourishes her mind and body. She learns that solitude is not emptiness, but fullness, a fullness that prepares her for the world, a fullness that cannot be taken away by anyone else. She learns forgiveness, not only of others, but of herself. She forgives the disappointments, the betrayals, the times she has been misunderstood, the times she has been left behind. And in forgiveness, she releases the chains that would bind her. She carries only what serves her growth, what strengthens her heart, what fuels her journey. And in this release, she finds serenity. And let me tell you this, she becomes magnetic. Not because she seeks attention, not because she demands admiration, but because her light shines with authenticity. She walks into a room and the energy shifts, not because she needs it to, but because she has walked so long and so deeply with herself that she carries a quiet authority. People notice. They are drawn to the calm, the confidence, the self-possession that comes from having faced oneself and emerged intact. And in this, she realizes that power is not loud, it is not flashy, it is steady, it is enduring, it is luminous. There is joy in walking alone. There is laughter in the quiet, a deep, unshakable laughter that arises from knowing that life belongs to her, and that she belongs to herself. She can dance in the living room with no one to witness, sing in the shower with no one to applaud, weep on her own shoulder without shame. She can dream in colors that no one else understands, love in ways that no one else sees, live in freedom that no one else can take. And in this joy, she becomes whole. She learns the sacredness of boundaries. She understands that not every hand extended is meant for holding. Not every smile is sincere. Not every voice carries truth. She protects her space, her energy, her heart. She learns that saying no is not cruelty, but courage. She learns that walking away is not weakness, but wisdom. and in this she walks not with fear but with dignity. And when the world tries to measure her worth by the number of friends she has, she laughs softly, for she knows the truth. Her worth is not measured in numbers, in validation, in the applause of others. Her worth is measured in the depth of her compassion, in the resilience of her spirit, in the courage of her heart, in the authenticity of her life. And in this knowing she walks taller than ever, unshaken, unbent, unbroken. A woman with no friends learns that she is enough. Not someday, not with effort, not if she becomes someone else. She is enough now. She carries within her the power to create, to love, to forgive, to dream, to rise. She carries within her the knowledge that she does not need anyone to complete her, to validate her, to guide her. She is her own guide, her own companion, her own family, her own home. And in this she discovers freedom, strength, joy, and above all peace. Her power is quiet. It does not scream. It does not demand attention. It is steady. It is unwavering. It is profound. It comes from knowing oneself, from trusting oneself, from loving oneself in ways that no one else can teach. And the world, in its clamor and rush, often does not recognize this power at first. But those who see it, truly see it, cannot help but be moved. For it is a power born not of circumstance, not of luck, not of the approval of others, but of the deep, unshakable, radiant courage of a woman who walks alone, and has discovered in that solitude that she is everything. And so she walks on. She walks through the streets, through the fields, through the rooms of her mind, through the corridors of her heart. She walks through the moments of doubt, through the days of joy, through the nights of reflection. She walks, always knowing that her steps are her own, that her path is her own, that her life is her own. And in this walking, in this aloneness, she finds the truest, most profound power there is, the power to be wholly, unshakably, unapologetically herself. She walks with dignity. She walks with courage. She walks with joy. She walks with love. She walks with freedom. And those who once thought she needed them will see that she never did. She only needed herself. And in finding herself, she has found the world. A woman who walks alone learns patience, though it is not always a gift freely given. It is earned in the quiet hours of waiting, in the stretches of time when the world seems indifferent to her presence, when the clock ticks on and the days fold into one another without recognition or applause. She learns that patience is not the absence of desire, not the suppression of longing, but the gentle, deliberate choice to move forward without rushing, to trust the unfolding of her own life without the desperate need to force it into shape. She waits for the moments that matter, for the people who matter, for the opportunities that align with the rhythm of her spirit. And in that waiting, she discovers a deep well of strength that is invisible to those who cannot stand still. Each pause teaches her something about the world, about the hearts that surround her, and about herself. She learns to distinguish between urgency that demands attention and urgency that arises from fear, and in that distinction she finds a clarity that cannot be shaken by the noise of the world. In the stillness she begins to see clearly, to see the edges of situations, the intentions hidden behind words, the truth beneath appearances. She learns discernment, not as a sharp tool to judge or punish, but as a lantern that illuminates the path ahead. She recognizes that not every hand offered is meant to hold her, not every smile is sincere, not every voice carries wisdom. She has walked the corridors of disappointment and betrayal, and in doing so, she has learned to recognize the subtle signs that others might miss. She notices the hesitation in a glance, the dishonesty in flattery, the emptiness behind promises. And she understands that her energy is sacred, that her time is precious, and that to give either freely to those who would squander it is to diminish herself. This discernment becomes a quiet power, a shield that allows her to navigate the world without fear, to move through life with confidence that she is choosing her companions, her opportunities, and her actions wisely. With patience and discernment comes intentionality. She does not act impulsively or from habit. Every step is considered, every word chosen with care, every decision weighed against the truth of her values and the vision she holds for her life. Intentionality is not a burden, it is a liberation. It frees her from the pressure to conform, from the expectation to please, from the need to follow the currents of society's demands. She learns to act from the center of her own being, to move in alignment with her inner compass, rather than the whims of the crowd. She recognizes that her actions have weight, that they ripple through her life and the lives of others, and so she moves with purpose. She takes the time to cultivate habits that nourish her mind and body, to speak words that heal rather than harm, to invest in experiences that expand rather than deplete her. She learns that to act intentionally is to honor her own life, and in that honoring, she discovers a dignity that cannot be stolen, a presence that commands respect without demand. Patience teaches her endurance. She learns that not all victories are immediate, not all changes are swift, not all understandings arrive when she wishes them to. Some lessons must be repeated, some doors must remain closed until she has grown enough to walk through them with grace. She discovers that life has its own timing, a rhythm that cannot be hurried, and that rushing only brings frustration. In the long stretches of waiting, she learns to cultivate stillness, to find comfort in her own presence, to build resilience in the face of uncertainty. She comes to understand that patience is not passive. It is active engagement with the flow of life, a conscious choice to remain present and steady even when the world seems impatient, even when those around her demand movement or resolution. Discernment sharpens her perception, and it does so not out of cynicism but out of wisdom. She begins to understand the subtle patterns of human behavior, the cycles of loyalty and betrayal, the difference between fleeting interest and genuine commitment. She notices who invests in her with sincerity, who speaks with authenticity, who aligns their actions with their words. She sees through the masks people wear, through the pretenses, the superficial gestures, and the empty promises. She learns to ask not only who others are, but who she is in their presence, how their actions impact her spirit, and whether she wishes to allow them to remain part of her world. Discernment becomes a filter through which she passes her experiences, separating nourishment from poison, truth from illusion, love from convenience. In this careful selection, she protects her energy and her heart, preserving the integrity of her life even as she engages with the vast and often unpredictable currents of the world. Intentionality transforms her choices. She understands that the small decisions of daily life accumulate into the architecture of her existence. The words she speaks, the people she welcomes, the time she devotes to her passions, the commitments she honors or declines, all are bricks in the structure of her life. She moves deliberately, aware that actions taken in haste or without reflection often bring regret, while those chosen with clarity and purpose bring growth, fulfillment, and alignment with her truest self. She invests in her own development, in the cultivation of skills, in the nurturing of creativity, in the deepening of understanding, and she does so without apology or need for validation. She recognizes that intentional living is a form of respect, not only for herself but for the life she inhabits, for the opportunities she receives, for the relationships she chooses. Patience, discernment, and intentionality become intertwined, each strengthening the other. In the quiet, she learns to wait, not out of fear or resignation, but out of understanding that life unfolds according to its own rhythm. In the clarity of observation, she learns to choose wisely, to recognize what aligns with her spirit and what does not. And in the deliberate action that follows, she learns to live fully, to act authentically, to move with purpose. She discovers that the world does not need her to rush, that her worth is not diminished by the silence of her steps, that her power is found in the alignment of thought, action, and heart. She begins to recognize the beauty in patience. The way a flower opens slowly to the sun, the way a river carves its path over time, the way stars trace their journey across the night sky, all become metaphors for the unfolding of her own life. She sees that growth is rarely instantaneous, that wisdom is seldom immediate, and that the deepest transformations require time. Patience becomes not a trial but a teacher, guiding her to embrace the journey, to honor the process, to trust in the unfolding of her own becoming. Discernment teaches her humility. She sees that she cannot control others, that she cannot force sincerity or loyalty, that she cannot compel truth where it does not exist. She learns to let go of expectation and to observe the world with eyes wide open, to accept people and situations as they are rather than as she wishes them to be. This clarity does not breed detachment, but a focused engagement with life, a conscious decision to direct her energy where it will bear fruit and to step away where it will not. In this discernment she discovers freedom, a liberation from the chains of disappointment and the exhaustion of misplaced effort. Intentionality gives her confidence. Every deliberate action reinforces her sense of agency. Every thoughtful decision strengthens her understanding that she shapes her own path. She moves with certainty, knowing that even in solitude she is not powerless, that even in quiet she is not invisible, that even in the absence of others' guidance she is capable of steering her own course. She learns that intention is not rigid control, but conscious alignment, the practice of living in accordance with one's values, dreams, and truths. And in the weaving together of patience, discernment, and intentionality, she discovers a rhythm to her life that is uniquely hers. She moves through the world with grace, with clarity, with purpose. She learns that waiting is not weakness, observation is not suspicion, and deliberate action is not vanity. Each step, each choice, each pause becomes an expression of her wisdom, a testament to her self-respect, a reflection of the life she is determined to create for herself. She learns that walking alone does not mean walking aimlessly, and that solitude does not equal emptiness. She finds in the alignment of patience, discernment, and intentionality the power to live fully, to move deliberately, to act authentically, and to become the woman she was always meant to be. There is a courage in choosing solitude that many fail to see, many fail to understand, many fail to honor. It is not the kind of courage that comes from loud declarations or heroic feats that others applaud. It is a quiet, steadfast courage, the courage of standing firm in the truth of one's own spirit, even when the world calls for compromise, even when the voices of society demand conformity, even when the heartbeat of loneliness seems deafening in the dark of the night. To choose solitude over toxic companionship is to recognize the worth of one's own soul, to honor the sanctity of one's own life, to refuse to allow another to diminish, manipulate, or drain the light within. It is the courage to say no when every fiber of the world is urging yes, to step away from comfort, familiarity, or the illusion of belonging, and to trust that the path of integrity, though lonely at times, is the only path that will preserve the self. A woman who embraces this courage learns that toxic companionship wears many disguises. It can come wrapped in flattery, in charm, in the gentle sweetness of promises that dissolve like mist when tested. It can appear as loyalty, as friendship, as love, as guidance, as laughter shared. But beneath these masks, it gnaws at her energy, erodes her confidence, undermines her self-respect, and leaves her questioning the very foundation of her being. To recognize this toxicity is not always immediate. It is a process, a slow unveiling, a quiet illumination of truth that demands clarity and reflection. It requires courage to look deeply, to acknowledge the harm, to name the patterns, to see the ways in which her spirit is being compromised. And once she sees, she is faced with a choice to cling to the familiar, the habitual, the comfortable, or to step into the uncertain space of solitude where her soul can breathe freely and her power can regenerate. Choosing solitude is not an act of bitterness. It is not an act of anger or revenge. It is an act of love, love for oneself, love for one's growth, love for the life that she is determined to create. It is a refusal to settle for relationships that diminish, that drain, that take without giving, that demand compromise of integrity. She learns that the world will not always understand this choice, that friends may question it, that society may judge it, that whispers may follow her steps. And yet she walks forward, guided by the quiet voice within, a voice that knows that no companionship is worth sacrificing the peace, the dignity, the freedom of her own heart. In the act of walking away from toxicity, she discovers the depth of her own strength. It is a strength that cannot be measured by the presence of allies, by the applause of peers, or by the visible signs of support. It is a strength born of necessity, born of the refusal to surrender her spirit, born of the understanding that her life is hers alone to govern. In solitude, she learns to meet herself fully, to confront her fears, to embrace her weaknesses, and to celebrate her strengths. She becomes her own witness, her own cheerleader, her own family. And in this she learns that courage is not always loud, that bravery is not always dramatic, that true power is often found in the silent act of protecting one's own soul. She learns the boundaries are acts of courage as well. To step away from toxic influences, to draw a line, to assert the inviolability of her space, her energy, and her time. She learns that saying no is not rejection, but self-respect. She learns that refusing to engage with those who seek to manipulate or harm her is not cruelty, but wisdom. And she practices this courage daily, in small ways and large, with people whose habits are subtle and people whose patterns are blatant, learning to recognize danger before it takes root, learning to protect herself before her light is dimmed, learning to honor her own needs above the demands of those who cannot see beyond their own desires. In solitude, she discovers reflection. She reflects on the patterns that have brought toxicity into her life, on the choices that have allowed others to wield power over her, on the moments when her boundaries were ignored or dismissed. She does not dwell in blame, nor does she linger in guilt. Instead, she observes, she learns, she strengthens. She understands that her courage is cultivated not in isolation from life, but through engagement with it, through awareness of it, through the recognition that each toxic encounter is an opportunity to know herself more deeply, to refine her instincts, to sharpen her discernment. She learns to carry forward the lessons of the past without carrying the weight of resentment, to honor her experiences without allowing them to dictate her freedom, to transform pain into wisdom and wisdom into courage. Choosing solitude allows her to reclaim her voice. In the presence of toxic companionship, her words may have been dismissed, her opinions undervalued, her dreams undermined. In solitude, she learns to speak first to herself, then to the world, with clarity and conviction. She finds that her voice is not diminished by distance, that her thoughts are valid even when unshared, that her presence is powerful even when unacknowledged. She practices the courage of articulation, the courage of expression, the courage of asserting her truth, and she discovers that living honestly in alignment with one's values is a revolutionary act in a world that constantly pressures conformity and compromise. In choosing solitude, she also cultivates patience. She understands that the world may not immediately fill the void left by toxic companionship. She may face moments of longing, of loneliness, of questioning, but she learns that the discomfort is temporary and necessary, that growth requires space, that self-discovery thrives in quiet, and that the relationships that are worth cultivating will arrive in their own time. with authenticity and reciprocity. She embraces the silence, cherishes the calm, and trusts in the unfolding of life. There is a dignity in this courage that cannot be purchased or borrowed. It is cultivated through the refusal to settle, the refusal to accept false comfort, the refusal to compromise one's truth for the sake of belonging. She walks tall even if the room is empty, even if the night is long, even if the path ahead is uncertain. Each step is a declaration: I am worth protecting. I am worth honoring. I am worth choosing peace over chaos, integrity over convenience, freedom over the chains of toxic attachment. Each step carries the weight of her self-respect, the clarity of her discernment, and the quiet power of her resolve. She learns that courage is contagious. In choosing solitude over toxicity, she inspires others, even silently, to examine their own relationships, to recognize their own boundaries, and to honor their own worth. She becomes a living example of strength, integrity, and wisdom, a testament to the idea that love for oneself is the foundation of all other love. Those who watch her, those who know her story, may come to understand that bravery is not always a roar, and that the fiercest acts of strength often happen behind closed doors, in the quiet refusal to surrender, in the choice to walk alone rather than walk with harm. She discovers joy in her solitude. The laughter she shares with herself is deep, authentic, unshakable. The freedom she experiences in knowing that she controls her life, that her energy is protected, that her heart is safe, is profound. She learns that she does not need permission to be happy, that her contentment does not rely on others, that the absence of toxic voices creates a space where her soul can flourish. She explores passions, cultivates talents, nurtures creativity, and grows into her most authentic self. And in this courage she finds power. Power that cannot be stolen, power that does not require validation, power that grows silently but cannot be ignored. She walks with the dignity of one who knows herself, with the clarity of one who honors herself, with the strength of one who has chosen herself over the demands of a world that would diminish her. She becomes unshakable not because she is untested, but because she has faced challenge, recognized deception, and chosen integrity over ease. She becomes radiant not because she seeks attention, but because her spirit is unburdened, her heart is whole, and her life is aligned with truth. There is a journey that begins not with a step outside, but with a step inward. Walking alone is not merely the absence of companions. It is the conscious embrace of one's own presence, the deliberate choice to face the world with nothing but the strength that resides within. It is a journey that transforms the spirit, that reshapes the heart, that clarifies the mind, that allows a woman to shed the weight of dependence that the world has pressed upon her, and to rise into the freedom that has always been hers. Though she may not have yet known it, she begins this journey often reluctantly, because the comfort of others, even when flawed or limiting, tempts her with familiarity, tempts her with the illusion of ease, tempts her with the notion that being alone is synonymous with weakness. But in truth, she discovers that walking alone is the bravest act she will ever undertake, the most revolutionary, the most profound declaration of selfhood. Dependence is a subtle weight, often invisible until she begins to notice how her thoughts, actions, and emotions are tethered to the approval, presence, or validation of others. It comes in the form of needing guidance when she already knows the answers, seeking comfort when she already possesses it within, and bending herself into shapes to fit expectations that are not her own. And the first step in walking alone is to release that dependence, to recognize that her worth, her strength, her voice, her vision are not contingent on the accompaniment of another. She learns that the hand she reaches for in times of doubt is often her own, that the encouragement she seeks in the words of others can be found within the rhythm of her own heartbeat, and that the love she longs to receive from outside is first to be cultivated within. In the beginning, doubt accompanies her steps. The mind, accustomed to reliance on others, whispers of inadequacy, of loneliness, of fear. The world around her seems larger, louder, more challenging when faced alone. Yet each step, each choice to persist, each moment of embracing silence without distraction, begins to chip away at that doubt. She learns to question the source of her fear, to examine its shape, to understand its origin. She realizes that much of what she once believed about her limitations came not from truth, but from the voices of others, from the insistence of the world that she could not stand, could not thrive, could not rise without assistance. And in this revelation she begins to reclaim power, the power to trust herself, the power to move with confidence, the power to act without hesitation. Freedom begins not in grand gestures, but in the quiet certainties of daily life. It is found in the simple decisions, choosing her path, shaping her environment, selecting the people she allows into her circle, refusing the intrusion of those who diminish her spirit. It is found in the hours she spends alone in reflection, in the work she does to nurture her mind, her body, and her soul, in the habits she builds that reinforce self-reliance. She discovers that freedom is not a distant prize to be won, but a state of being cultivated in each mindful choice, each deliberate action, each affirmation that she belongs to herself first and foremost. And with each realization, the chains of dependence loosen, the shadow of doubt fades, and the radiance of her own power grows brighter. Walking alone teaches her endurance. She learns that strength is not measured by the support that surrounds her, but by the constancy with which she stands, moves, and creates in the absence of external validation. She endures the moments of uncertainty, the stretches of loneliness, the challenges that arise when no one else carries the weight for her. And in enduring, she discovers that she is capable of far more than she imagined, that her spirit is resilient, and that her heart can hold joy, sorrow, triumph, and reflection all at once without breaking. Endurance becomes a companion, steady and loyal, guiding her through the storms and the calm with equal assurance, reminding her that the journey itself is the teacher, and that each step carries its own lessons. Discernment emerges as a gift of solitude. She begins to see the world with clarity that dependence often obscures. She notices who honors her, who respects her boundaries, who speaks and acts in alignment with truth, and who does not. She learns to separate the ephemeral from the lasting, the superficial from the meaningful, the fleeting from the essential. In walking alone, she practices the art of choosing wisely, of weighing her investments of time, energy, and emotion. She learns that freedom is not merely the absence of others, but the presence of choice, the ability to decide who, what, and how she allows into her life, and the courage to walk away when alignment cannot be found. As she moves forward, she discovers a rhythm to her own being. The hurried pace of the world slows around her. She no longer feels compelled to follow the urgencies imposed by others. She finds joy in her own timing, in her own presence, in the deliberate unfolding of her life according to the cadence that fits her soul. There is power in this self-directed rhythm, a sovereignty that comes from knowing that she is not beholden to another's schedule, another's expectations, another's approval. In this rhythm, doubt loses its grip, for she walks with certainty, step by step, choice by choice, rooted in the knowledge of her own strength. She learns to embrace discomfort as a teacher. The solitude she chooses is not always easy. There are moments when the silence presses too close, when the absence of external validation feels like emptiness, when the heart longs for companionship. And yet, in those moments, she discovers the depth of her resilience. She learns that the discomfort of being alone is temporary and necessary, that it is the soil in which courage, clarity, and wisdom take root. Each challenge faced without dependence strengthens her, fortifies her resolve, and deepens her understanding of herself and her capacity to navigate life with grace and integrity. In the landscape of solitude, she finds creativity and insight. Ideas flow unencumbered by comparison or judgment. Dreams expand beyond the limits previously imposed by the opinions or expectations of others. She discovers the power to imagine, to create, to innovate, to explore the depths of her own mind and spirit without interruption or interference. The act of walking alone becomes a conduit for self-expression, a channel through which her unique gifts emerge into the world, shaped solely by her vision and intention. Her power becomes visible not in grand displays, but in the subtle transformation of her being. Each day she walks alone, she strengthens her independence, her clarity, her ability to act from intention rather than impulse, from wisdom rather than fear. She becomes a presence that commands attention not because she demands it, but because she embodies integrity, self-respect, and authentic strength. People notice, though she does not seek it. Her confidence radiates naturally. Her decisions carry weight. Her life unfolds in alignment with her truth, and in that alignment, her power is undeniable. Dependence fades entirely when she realizes that she does not need permission to be whole, that her value is intrinsic, that her voice matters, that her choices shape the reality she inhabits. Doubt diminishes when she recognizes that the obstacles she feared were never insurmountable, that the absence of others does not signify weakness, that every step she takes alone is a testament to her courage. Freedom blooms as a living reality when she embraces her sovereignty, cultivates her inner strength, and moves through life in accordance with her own vision. Walking alone, she learns the rhythm of her own heart, the clarity of her own mind, and the radiance of her own spirit. And in this journey from dependence to freedom, from doubt to power, she discovers a truth that cannot be taken from her, that walking alone is not a sentence but a choice, not a punishment but a privilege, not a limitation but a liberation. It is a path that leads to self-mastery, self-respect, self-love, and the unwavering realization that the life she builds with her own hands, her own heart, her own mind, is the life that will sustain her in ways no external presence ever could.